Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Green Man. Hope you're doing good and well. So for this 10th episode in the Dark Horse Disc series, I'm rejoined by the original guests of this series. We have John, JC Rock and Metal Reviews, and we have Hector, chilled in on a couch back from holiday, ready to kind of rejoin for this episode. And then for this episode, things are a little, just a tiny bit different, because this isn't an episode where it's been me that's chosen the album, or, you know, been providing the kind of short list of albums prior to us deciding on which album we would choose. It's actually Hector's choice. So this is Chilldude's choice of album for this episode. And we are talking about Pearl Jam's Yield, which came out back on the 3rd of February of 1998. And John's holding it up there, as you can see the album cover there. And yeah, so we're going to just slightly do things a tiny bit differently in that, you know, in previous episodes, we just talk about our memories in the first round and our first impressions. But for this one, we're also going to cover why we think the album's a bit of a dark horse in the first round. Then we'll do favorite tracks, and then we'll do where we think the album ranks in the Pearl Jam catalogue. So as this was Hector's choice, I think we're going to start with Hector.
Yeah, no, of course. So yeah, this album, it's an interesting for me. So first of all, when this album came out, it was in 1998. I remember the day I got it because I was on a date. I think it was a few days after Valentine's Day, 1998. I had a date with my then girlfriend, and I remember I bought her like that time. You know, I don't know if you remember some because you're too young, but there were some like stuffed bears called Sad Sams that they were like dogs and stuff. So I bought her that with the Titanic. You remember the Sad Sams? Yeah. So I bought
Sad Sams. No, I remember I remember Beanie Babies. That might have been later, right?
Oh, right. That rings a bell.
Yeah.
What are Sad Sams?
So Sad Sams, it's like they're like dog. It could be like dogs or different like plush toys, and they look like sad. And at the time, they were all the fuss. Like everyone loved them. And I remember this album came out February 3, 1998. So I remember specifically the date that I got it because I hadn't bought it. And it was February 14, 1998. So I went on this date and I picked her up. And then I gave her the gifts and everything. I bought her the Titanic album. And she was like, and I didn't see that she bought me anything. So she's like, oh, stop at the mall. So we stopped at the mall. And she's like, oh, I'll be right back. So I stay in the car. She comes out. And then she comes out with Pearl Jam Yield album. And she gives it to me. Here you go. I'm like, okay. So I started listening to the album. We went to eat, and after that, she broke up with me on Valentine's Day.
Oh no! Had you known Pearl Jam prior to that point?
No. I knew Pearl Jam at that point.
You knew them already. Okay. Yeah.
But the thing is, like that when I think of that album, my first thought is like of that moment. So for a long time, I hated that album.
Oh, right.
Because it evoked me to that memory. But it's an album that it's aged well. So on this one, we're talking, why is it a dark horse? I think it's a dark horse because at that time in 1998, there was a musical shift. What was popular then was new metal, the Korns, Limp Bizkit, Orgies, other type of band. And I think like Pearl Jam had, first of all, it had their first 3 albums were so huge and so massive. And after that, when they released No Code in, I think, 1996, that was like a kind of a weird album. I think I like it more now. But I think like after the 4th album, I kind of like fell a little bit out of love, like with Pearl Jam. I was like, okay, I like the first ones. But when that one came out, I think I listened to a single and I liked it. And it was the first album where they did a music video again for Do the Evolution. So it was huge because after Pearl Jam released 10, they didn't release music videos until their 4th album, until the 5th album, sorry. So yeah, I think it's a dark horse because many people at that time maybe like grew out of Pearl Jam a little bit, and they weren't as huge as they were with their first 3 albums. I think after their first 3 albums, there was a dip, but even though there was a dip, there were like the people that were very faithful to Pearl Jam, like a Grateful Dead. You know, when I think of Pearl Jam, And I think of their fans, I think like a type of Grateful Dead following, that they would follow them no matter what they do. But the people that were just casual listeners that listened to 10 and the first album, I think they lost some people. But I think Yield came out with no expectations. You know, they released it, and I thought that, you know, it was an album that captured much their essence, and they sounded more mature. So, but yeah, I believe it's a dark horse because of those reasons. You know, the musical shift. They were so huge with the first three albums that maybe there was like a Pearl Jam fatigue at the time. So those are all the reasons why I think Pearl Jam Yield should be considered a dark horse album.
Okay, cool. All right, John, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I don't really kind of like what the Heck was saying, where they weren't that popular. Like, you know, I was into new metal in like 1998. I think around that time I was like, it was the Limp Bizkit, Korn. I used to buy all the Korn albums. I think I was like discovering Rammstein at that time, like some of like the industrial stuff. So I didn't really pay attention. I think like most of the other grunge albums, like Nirvana was done, Soundgarden pretty much like released their kind of last album for like a long time, and same with Alice in Chains. They released their last album like a couple of years ago. I say last album, the last album with the main singer for a long time. And I didn't really pay much attention. I remember coming out. I remember the cover. I thought like it caught my attention with the Yield sign, but I didn't really go out and buy it. I probably listened to the singles, but when I listened to like the full album was many years later, just when streaming became available, and I thought it was pretty good. So why I think it's a dark horse, I think it's kind of different. I think it's a little more like laid back. I think it's you know, that the first couple albums they had like more like these like harder riffs, more of a grungier sound, and this is more of a, I guess like more like atmospheric, more like straightforward like rock. And I think that's why it's kind of a dark horse, because it's a little different sound, but I think the songs are very good. They do some like weird stuff on it, like Pearl Jam likes to do like some like filler tracks. There's that song where it's just like a red dot. I in my notes I just called it the red dot song, where it's kind of like just like this like filler track, but and they have some like weird titles. Like the last song is called R, and first song Brain of J. So it's kind of, they do some kind of different stuff, but I think in general it's kind of like a very laid back album, and I think that's why it might be a dark horse, because it's not like 10 verses like that. They kind of like took it back a little, so that's why I think it's a dark horse. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, interesting stuff. So yeah, I didn't know who Pearl Jam were when this came out. First of all, it wasn't until my friend's dad actually he recorded 10 and verses onto a cassette for me. I think he was trying to get me into rock music at the time. So this must have been around the year 2000 sort of time, I think. And so Pearl Jam were actually quite an early discovery for me when I got to them. And I remember liking 10 a lot. Verses took me a bit more time to get into, but I ended up really liking both of those albums. So Yield was a little bit later. I think it must have been a few years after that before I got to Yield, and I only listened to it a couple of times. It didn't really hit me very much, I have to say, but on revisiting it for this, I got into it a bit more, and I liked more of I think I liked more of the songs on here that were a style that you know, where Eddie is singing bigger sort of choruses and that sort of thing. There are a couple of kind of, as John, you were saying, like more garage, maybe garage rock style things on here that I wasn't as keen on. But we'll come on to a bit more about the tracks very shortly as well. Why I think it's a dark horse, I think, is probably the reasons that both of you have covered, particularly with, for me, it's probably because, I mean, I've fallen victim to this a bit, that I love 10 so much that that's the album I'm most likely to go back to. And you forget that they do have quite a few other albums. I mean, I'm a bit of a fan of I think it's Riot Act, actually. I quite like that album. Yeah, I mean, that's, I don't know that many Pearl Jam albums myself. So yeah, those are sort of my thoughts. So we'll move on to what our 3 favorites tracks are, as is the usual format for these videos. And so we'll go back to Hector for your picks, your favorites from this Yield album.
Man. So yeah, upon revisiting, this was an album also that I hadn't heard in a long time. Maybe it's because of the painful memories. but it's funny. So I was listening to it again, and it was hailed as a return to form, more like garage rock, straightforward, because No Code was an album that it didn't sell very well. So that's when the dip came. So when Yield came out, yeah, it had a better reception commercially. I like the song "Do the Evolution." I think it's a great song. It's a more rocking song, and I like the lyrics about the destruction of the earth, doing evolution. It's evolution, baby, and also I like the choir on the song, and I thought it's one of the Pearl Jam's it's definitely the most harder song on that album for that. So I love that song, but I also love the songs that they have, like Brain of Jay, that opens the album, and that one is very garage rock, and it starts the album very good. And the other 2 songs that I'm gonna say 4. I love "Given to Fly," which was the single and the first single that they released, and it's like a very uplifting song, at least for me, the lyrics and how they sing it. And the last song that I really like, that is more of a ballad, is "Wishlist," which I think it's a fan favorite of that album. And it's a more mellow track, more contemplative. But yeah, I think those 4 songs really round up what the album sounds like. It has garage rock, a little bit more harder stuff, more atmospheric, and some ballads. So those are they encompass the album as a whole. So those are my favorite tracks from Yield by Pearl Jam.
Okay. JC?
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna pretty much pick 2 of the same ones. "Given to Fly," that was one of the singles, but I think that's one of their best ballads from the 90s. I think that's just a really good song. Just the vocals are really great. You get the soft, clean vocals, and then in the chorus, you kind of get those more powerful vocals. So that's my number 1, and my number 2, I'm gonna pick another one of the same ones called "Wishlist." I think it's just it's just a really great song. I like the guitar tone on that one. That one stands out. They have that clean guitar tone, and on the rhythm guitar, and they kind of have this guitar effect. I guess it's kind of like a slightly echo type of effect for the lead guitar. I like that part. So the guitar playing stands out on "Wishlist." And my 3rd song, I'm gonna pick one of the deeper tracks. It's called MFC. I don't really know what that stands for, but I like that because it kind of has that kind of garage rock, but there's elements of that grunge, so the elements of that new wave 80s stuff. They got the clean guitar tones, and then they add in little hints of psychedelic rock in that one. So I think that's one of the deeper cuts that did stand out for me. So that's it. Those are my 3.
Cool. Oh, that's the first time I think I have matched with one of you on exactly 3 of the same tracks.
Yeah.
And it was the same with me and John. So I was "Given to Fly," "Wishlist," and MSC.
Yeah.
I really like "Given to Fly" because I think it sort of harks a bit more back to the style of Eddie's singing that I enjoy. "Wishlist," as you've both said, it's one of the much more mellow tracks on the album, but I think, as John was saying, with the guitar tone in that solo, I really like, that kind of comes in the middle of that song. I think is really enjoyable as well. And MFC, I think it's quite a short track, but it's not one of those tracks on the album that outstays its welcome for me. It's kind of quite it just has a bit of something that brings you into it a bit more. Not sure I can quite name what that is, whether it's kind of the way Eddie sings that track. It's quite a cool riff to it as well. So yeah, those would be my 3: "Given to Fly," "Wishlist," and MFC. The same as John. There's a track on here which I kind of don't like at all. I think it's Pilot. It's where he's sort of saying, like Pilot, I have a thought. Yeah, and that was every time I listened to this and run into this video this week, I had to skip that track. I was like, I can't listen to that. It's not that, I don't know, it's not the worst song I've heard or anything necessarily, but it was just I just couldn't listen to it by the time I got to my
I think it's the way Eddie sings that song. It's kind of annoying. There's another one that's weirder on that album, but I like it's Push Me, Pull Me. That one's kind of strange as well, but because he sings in a different way. But yeah, I know what you mean about Pilot. You know, it's like and actually when I was listening to that song. I don't know why he sounded like Scott. It reminded me of Scott Weiland from Stone Temple Pilots. Like that song would have been more of a Stone Temple Pilots song. I don't know why, but yeah, that's what it sounded like to me. But yeah, I agree. That's one of the lesser tracks that I like from that album as well.
Cool. All right, then I guess we move on to the final round then, and where we think we would put this one in the catalogue of Pearl Jam. So where would this one go for you, Hector? Where would you put this one? Number 1, above 10?
Never.
Never, yeah.
I think if I did that, we would all lose subscribers.
Yeah.
They would be like,
I probably lost a few by just suggesting that.
That happens. They will be like, how dare you? This list is invalid. Yeah, but no, you know, for me, with Pearl Jam, the first 3 albums are classics. To me, Still 10 is my number 1. Versus would be my number 2, and Vitology my number 3. So Yield, I would think would be like my 4th favorite Pearl Jam album. So I would put it 4 in their discography because I think it was a solid release, a return to more of rock because No Code was like strange and all over the place. And I think it's an album that I've enjoyed more as I've gotten older, maybe because, you know, now if you listen to it, that's like dad rock. So yeah, maybe that's why I like it more. But when it came out, I liked it, but I think that I didn't like it as much because there was it wasn't as rebellious as their first 3 albums or so. But yeah, I've liked it more over the years, and I think it's aged well. You know, it's a solid album that has aged well. There's just like a few songs that are weird, but the other ones are solid. So yeah, I would rank it 4th on my Pearl Jam discography.
Okay, cool. John?
And for me, I have it at 5 because I just kind of like did like a quick ranking. My number 1 is Versus. I liked it all better than 10. So my number 2 is 10. My number 3 is Vitology. And my number 4 is a Binaural from 2000. That one I like a lot. That's kind of like one of my dark horses for Pearl Jam. And I know some people don't like that one, but. And my number 5 is Yield, is this one. So that's where I rank it. I think it's you know, like you're all saying, it's a good album. It's just straightforward, just rock. It's got some like different stuff on there. So I think it's a pretty solid album.
Yeah, and for me, I suppose, as I only know 4 albums, I only know 10. So 10 would be my number 1. I mean, and that's one of my all-time favorite albums anyway. And then Versus, I think, would be next for me. Like that one a lot too. And then I suppose you've only got Yield and Riot Act. And it's kind of like, so I've known Riot Act for a fairly long time. I mean, I remember hearing the song I Am Mine coming out, that single. I'm not sure, they're about joint for me. I struggle to choose between the 2. Maybe I need a bit more time with Yield, but I can still see why you might regard it as a bit of a dark horse. I just get the sense of that, and just being myself, falling into that Pearl Jam trap of just liking their first couple of albums. So I mean, I guess that's why for me then. Okay, I guess we've reached the end, I think, of our rounds at least. So
you need to listen to Vitology.
I guess I haven't heard that one. So yeah, I'll have to give that a spin. So cool. Thanks to John, JC Rocker Metal Reviews as always, and Hector, Children on a Couch, for contributing to another one of these Dark Horse Disc episodes. I still plan to do a few more in this series, as long as I guess it kind of lasts. We'll carry it on for. And as I always say, don't forget to drop a subscribe to John, JC Rock and Metal Reviews, on his channel for all his album reviews, his rankings, and his coverage of all things rock and metal, and Hector at Children on a Couch Reviews as well for his reviews as well, and his interviews with up-and-coming bands. And also, of course, myself as well, Green Man, my coverage of similarly rock and metal album reviews. I also do some alternative indie and shoegaze stuff on my channel, and crazy sci-fi, horror, fantasy, random stuff like that too from time to time. So yeah, otherwise meet until our next episode next Sunday, which will be the 11th of the series. Take care, everybody. Bye from me and my guests. Till next time.